Welcome back to Socially Unapologetic. Today we have Ashley here. Ashley, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Excited to have you. I start all of my shows with a fun little game, so we're just gonna get right into it. We do two truths and
Okay.
one lie. So I'm gonna get you to tell us two truths and a lie. I kind of put everybody on the spot. I don't like to tell you beforehand because I want it to be super
Oh,
authentic. It can literally be anything. Like, I want people to kind of get to know you and who you are. Then you'll tell us, and then at the end, I will guess.
okay. Well, this should be interesting. I two children and have been with my husband for 20 years. I have been skydiving before, and I am deathly afraid of spiders.
So I love that. So at the end, we'll go over it and kind of I will guess, and then we will have people guess as well. But a little bit of a backstory. Ashley and I actually met each other at a gym, and Ashley is one of the members, and I just feel like we connected so well. So I'm super excited for her to be here today, and you guys get to know her. Going into that, Ashley, can you tell us a bit about your journey and how you got to be the entrepreneur that you are today?
It's a good question. Half the time, I don't even know how I became the entrepreneur that I am today. I feel like I fell down a rabbit hole and everything just kind of happened for me. So I was a police officer in Hamilton with the Hamilton Police Service, and I started maternity leave with my daughter, which was 5 years ago last month when I went off on that mat leave. And I knew going off on that mat leave that I hoped to never return to policing. I knew when I had my son, shocking, now we know what a truth is. When I had my son, I knew that I didn't want to go back to policing just because of the inherent dangers with that job. But I had no way of making that happen. Didn't have a business. I didn't have anything at that point. I'm very trusting in the universe, and I just kind of put it out there and was like, at some point, something is going to come to me and it's going to be the thing. And while on mat leave with my daughter in January of 2020, I decided that maybe I could make my son's birthday cake, and his birthday was in March. Of course, I had this big grand idea in my head. I don't know why I thought the first cake I was going to make was going to be a three-tier construction cake, and the bottom tier was going to be like a tire made out of fondant. It was a whole thing. And I just thought I could learn how to do that. And I started watching YouTube videos, and I absolutely fell in love with it. And I just started practicing on cakes, and I would make a practice cake and I would just put it on my Facebook and give it away. And people started asking me about things. And I created a group because I was like, oh, I'm kind of flooding my personal feed with this. I was like, maybe people don't want to see it. So I created a group and came up with a business name, which in hindsight, I would have had a different. My business name is Ashley Sweets and Treats. I would have went a different route, I think, with that. I come up with something more creative. If I knew that it was going to be the thing that it is, one day I will rebrand. I'm not there yet, but I will. But Bimbrook, where I live, is really what made it such a business because when COVID hit, everybody didn't want to go into the stores anymore and people wanted to do porch pickup, and I started making different treats and they really made it into a business. It was not something that I set out from the beginning and I was like, well, I made one cake, let's make this a business. And it just really snowballed from there. In January 2021, we started construction on my kitchen, which is just over my shoulder to my right. And we put a whole second kitchen in the basement of the house because I knew that if I was hopefully going to be able to leave policing, that I needed to do it properly. So we had to have it licensed through the city and inspected through public health and do the whole thing. And that all happened. And 4 days from now will be my 3-year anniversary of officially leaving the Hamilton Police Service.
Yay. And how long were you with the Hamilton Police Service?
On paper, 12 and a half years. I had two mat leaves in there, but it was 12 and a half years. I would have had my 15-year anniversary in April if I was still with them.
Wow. And what has been in the past 3 years now? What has been your biggest reward in your business?
The biggest reward is I went from a very negative career where nobody calls you on a good day. Nobody calls you because they want you to come and celebrate with them. nobody smiles when you go to their door, to now it's the complete opposite of that. Like it's so opposite. I open my door to smiles when people pick up. I have smiles when I deliver. Like I just it's I'm such a positive, optimistic person, and it was very much like a draining, negative environment to be in, and now it's always such a positive environment in that way, and now I get to have my kids in that positivity too, right? And not come home bearing like the weight of the various service calls I would have went to that day.
Yeah, and also with policing, like nobody really appreciates what you do, right? Like you're never really thanked. Whereas when you're baking these cakes
Yeah,
and you're doing these things for these people's celebrations, it's like they're so thankful because they don't want to do it. They
yeah.
don't know how to do it. They're like,
It's
I
true.
need that.
I've been thanked so much more as like a cake maker and the other things that I do than I ever was as a police officer. And I'm like, I'm so much safer doing this. Like that was not a safe thing to do at all. But people are so appreciative of it. And but I think that it's just I don't know, we're people I think inside people always appreciate what the police do, but it's not like an outward appreciation. Whereas like when I put
Mhm.
a cake in somebody's hands, they're not just gonna be like, okay, and walk away, right? They're gonna be like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, thank you, and hopefully say great things about it.
Yeah. No, definitely. What has been your biggest roadblock or failure? I don't like the word failure. But what has been your biggest like roadblock in your business so far?
Figuring out how to run a business. So like figuring out like the big thing is always, like what do you charge? And women tend to undercharge for what
Mhm.
they're worth, right? Like men rarely ever doubt their worth or question it. They just are like, I want to get paid $100 an hour, right? And they will charge that. So the biggest thing is like, always like breaking everything down. Okay, what does it cost me to bake this cake? How long would it take to make that cake? Like, what do I deserve to get paid hourly? What's my overhead? Like, it's wonderful that my kitchen's in my house, but it's like, okay, how much more are we paying for water and hydro and like all of that kind of stuff, right? So I think the
Mhm.
biggest thing is figuring out how to properly price things and, go from there and like not be intimidated to charge what I think that I'm worth. And as my skills progress, then obviously raising my prices to reflect that.
Mhm. And like that kind of like wears into like the imposter syndrome almost. So where do you turn to when you are feeling that like self doubt and like imposter syndrome that's kind of kicking in?
I read so many, like, I hate calling them self help books, but I feel like that's the only category really that they fall into. Like, I read so many health self help books. I listen to podcasts. I watch tons of YouTube videos. I'm in a couple really good baking community groups, really, really supportive. And you can go there and kind of just be like, even in like I had completely burnt myself out at the end of last year and January of this year. Like I couldn't do anything, I don't think, for the whole month of January. And I just had to go to that group and be like, okay, so now how do I get through this? And how do I make sure that this doesn't happen again? Right.
Mhm.
So it's just trying to make sure that there's people around who understand that because it's like a lot of businesses things ebb and flow, but especially around the holidays, like I could keep my ovens going 24/7 and it wouldn't
Yeah.
be enough to keep up, but
Yeah.
when do you give yourself time?
And yeah, and I love that you touch on that because the community base, because it's also like collaboration over competition. And I feel a lot of the
Yeah,
times business owners kind of they're scared to reach out to people in their industry because they're like, oh, they're my competition. I don't want to like step on any toes. But it's really about that collaboration, right? Like we all as business owners and entrepreneurs deal day to day with these struggles and like yeah there's ups and downs and there's ebbs and flows and I was the same way in January with my business. Like my business completely went from like being up here to crashing all of a sudden in January. Like everybody was just like, oh, going into the new year I need to watch my funds and my money. And I was just like, oh my god, what do I do? And I kind of was like, if I thought back, because I've been in business for almost 4 years now. If I thought back to my first year and that happened, I would be like, where would I turn? Like, I honestly would think I would have failed and I would have just shut down and
yeah,
been like, okay, I'm going to go to corporate because, but then when that happened to me in January, I was like, no, I've seen myself pick myself back up. This is the way of the business. How can I redirect my negativity all the time and being like, there's something positive that's going to come out of this. It's going to be determination. I'm going to have to grind harder. I'm going to have to put in that more time. But good always comes out of it when you're not in that constant battle of negativity and looking at the positive and realizing that there is collaboration opportunities and you do have those people and not everything is always competition.
Yeah, and maybe it's like, maybe January is like, I'm gonna batch all my content in January and like get that set up, or I'm gonna
Yeah.
like read books, or like that's like the okay, January is the time where I'm gonna like mentally get myself back together, to be able to get through the rest of the year again, right?
Yeah, and I think that kind of touches into my next question of kind of like what keeps you motivated in business? Like what's that thing that when you wake up every day you're just like I'm excited and I'm motivated and I feel that like happiness going downstairs and baking or wherever it is.
Honestly, it's the way people react when I give them the things that I've made, right? Or when I get messages afterwards and emails and they're like, "Oh my gosh," like, people will be like, I'm gonna order this many cupcakes. It's gonna be way too many. And then they'll send me an email and they're like, I didn't even get a cupcake because they all got eaten and everybody couldn't stop saying enough good things. And like, it's that because I've never had that in anything else that I did before, right? Like before I was a police officer, I worked for 8 years in customer service at Staples. Like, nobody was ever happy. Like, like, so that's where my husband and I met. And like, people don't treat you very well in customer service.
Mhm.
So, and then policing is ultimately customer service again. They don't treat you very well in that. So now it's just like, it's because I feel like people really value what I do now. And I feel like it's because I do a fairly good job of showing people the value of what they're getting. But it's just the reception. And like when I make a cake that I've spent hours on and I put that cake in somebody's hand and I get to see their reaction to it, or even when my kids see the cakes before they go out the door and they're like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, I get to like raise my kids in this environment where they see me working hard building something for myself. Like my daughter talks all the time. She'll be 5 in a week and she talks about how she's going to take over the bakery when she's older,
Aw.
right? And she
Yeah.
can't wait to be a baker when she's a mommy. And she says all these things, right? And it's just, it's that stuff. It's like the positivity that people pour into me then turns around and goes right into my business.
Oh, I love that. That's so cute. I love that she's like looking up to you. And that has to be so rewarding just in itself, right? Like feeling that
Yep.
like you're doing good rather than like before when you were in the field that you were like you had to basically shut off all emotions before you walked in your door. And like that's hard. Like
Yeah.
that's a whole battle in itself. And it's like you're human. Like things can affect you and you can walk in that door and maybe you nobody knows what you saw at work. So it's kind of like now you get to wake up and like feel that positivity and just like give those people a life like a reward. Like they're celebrating, they're everybody's happy when they're eating dessert. So
Yeah, I want them to feel the energy from this business. I would have never wanted them to feel the energy in
exactly, yeah.
policing, right? Because
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
so different.
So now that you have switched careers and you're in this industry for 3 years now, the your new like the Ashley Sweets, what does work life balance look for you now as what you thought it was before when you were in policing? Like how has that kind of transformed?
So it's just it's different. In December, there's no work-life balance. And
You're like,
and that's
I
okay
don't have a
because I don't
life.
yes, because I don't like the cold anyways. But like I'm just coming out of a summer where I take a lot of time off in the summer and I can because I'm in control of the orders that come in and don't come in, right? So I can weigh different parts of the year, more heavily. So like in the fall and the winter, I can just take on every single thing and, get through it. But then I'm like, okay, once summer comes, I get to take a lot of that time off. Whereas, policing, you're given like your set time off and you have to sign for that time off in order of seniority. Now I would be like top of the list because everybody's so young in policing. But, like if somebody like say with kids now, right? If I wanted Christmas off, but I'm the sixth person to sign, well, those top 5 people could take Christmas and I don't get it, right?
Mhm.
So now like nobody gets to tell me I have to work on Christmas and I will never work on Christmas. Like I would
Yeah.
never make pickups on Christmas, right? Like my pickups end Christmas Eve in the morning. and then I have
Mhm.
the rest of Christmas Eve, and then I give myself time off after Christmas. So nobody gets to tell me I have to work my kids' birthdays, that I have to miss, dance or gymnastics or basketball or all of these different things. So it's different when the pressure is like fully on you to make sure that you're constantly bringing new people in, right? To always have the orders and stuff, but at the same time, like if I want to go to a field trip with my kids and it's on a Thursday, which is, one of my busier days in the bakery, I can be like, okay, I'm going to go to the field trip, but then I'll just make work Thursday evening, right?
Mhm.
Whereas that's never a thing that you can do when somebody else is in charge of your time.
Yeah. No, that's I love that because I think a lot of the times too, people perceive business owners as like you can take any time off and you can do whatever you want, but it's like yes, to a certain extent, but then we're making that up with other times. So before you like you're saying if you want to do that during the day, then you're working at night. So it's kind of like that give and take, like you're still getting it done, but you also have that flexibility to still be present in those things that your kids are doing.
Yeah, you work your schedule around your life instead of trying to, work your life around your schedule, which is what you have to do when you
Mhm.
go into a 9 to 5 job.
Where do you feel that you are almost like wearing yourself thin in your business? Like somewhere that like I know a lot of people's answers are usually like marketing or like focusing on like their finances and stuff like that. So where do you feel that you're kind of like I need to put more time and effort into that?
Social media is, I think, the hardest thing, right?
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
like, obviously, from what you do, it's like it changes every single day.
Every day.
So
Every
it's
day.
like, as soon as you're like, "Okay, I think I got the algorithm figured out," and then they're like, "No, no, we don't want that anymore. Like, we want videos. Oh, wait, no, we don't want videos anymore. We want still photos." I'm like, "No, now we want B-roll," right? I put up a B-roll reel the other day, and it got so many views so fast, and I'm like, but it's just like it's so I think that that's the hardest thing just to keep up with is just like always trying to figure out the way the algorithms are changing, right? And it's like, even between Facebook and Instagram, owned by the same companies, but they still work two different ways, right? So, and like my group on Facebook does way better than my page on Facebook, but a lot of my leads now come from Instagram because I put more focus into my Instagram in the last year and a half or so.
Mhm.
So it's just it's a struggle to keep up with the changes there.
Yeah, and I like that you brought that up because a lot of business owners have these issues and I talk to people daily about it and it's like we're all trying to stay on the next trend. We're all trying to like hop on and be like, okay, now does this work? Does this work? Does this work? But I think something that a lot of people miss in the marketing and social media world is like that consistency. Like if we stay consistent with what we're posting and we show that authenticity, Instagram is that second Google. I always say this is that second Google. So like somebody's gonna search you on Google and then they're gonna like if you clarify that you're real on Instagram, they're just gonna get a glimpse of your website basically on Instagram. So it's like who you are, what you do, and how they can access you. And it's just like if we always keep that in mind, it's so important because then we don't get so caught up in like the hamster wheel of like, oh my God, Instagram now tells me I have to post 7 days a week. Oh my God, people are telling me I have to post seven
Mm,
reels a week or else I'm not going to see any. And I'm just like sitting here like, oh my God, no. I'm like, let's just focus on the consistency because
yeah,
as a business owner, it's so you're wearing every single hat in your business. And it's like social media shouldn't it is a big part, but it shouldn't like drain you because then that's when you steer away from it. And that's when people just get so intimidated
yeah,
because they're like, I don't want to do that. It takes so much time and effort. But you said like just that B-roll video, writing words over it. It's like that gets that views and that pumps it out. And that maybe will take you 5, 10 minutes versus like filming a whole video that's going to take 10 times longer. So it's like kind of like
yeah,
finding those loopholes of how it can make it easier for you and nurturing your audience because the people that follow you for a reason. So like how can you nurture them and what they're wanting?
yeah.
Go
And
ahead.
what I know of my audience is like they want to see the behind the scenes things, which is hard because it's like I don't often think, oh gosh, I should set up a camera right before I decorate this cake. And then afterwards, I'm like, why didn't I set up a camera while I decorate that cake?
Yeah.
Right. But the other day, I was literally like, I have a 5 kilogram block of chocolate that I got to cut up. And I was like, I'm going to turn the camera on and I'm going to cut this chocolate. right? And it was
Mhm.
like, 1,500 views in like an hour. And I was like, what, who wants to watch me cut chocolate? Right? But I
Yeah.
intentionally didn't put music over it, and, people could just hear me cutting the chocolate, and I was like, and I know that people like to see that behind the scenes stuff, and I was like, and it was easy, right? There's no
Mhm.
editing and there's no stuff, and I think sometimes we do just overthink things,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, sometimes people just wanna see the simple things, and I've never been somebody who is like, every single thing has to be, like, perfect, right? And I used to, now I don't, just because I don't have the time, but I used to do lives in my Facebook group all the time. Like, a couple times a week, I'd go in and do lives, and there was, like, hundreds of people that would come and join the lives, and, like, I would just talk, and they'd ask me questions, and that was actually a big thing that built up my community, I think, was just that, and it was just, like, me being myself on the camera with, like, probably chocolate or flour on my shirt, right? Just, you know, coming there as I was, and that's what my audience likes to see.
Yeah, that real raw, like, like, no, like, people, well, they're like, "Oh, I need to put on all this makeup." It's like, no, like, we wanna see the real, the raw, the grit that almost goes into being that business owner, because social media has always been like a camera lens. Like, everybody thinks everything needs to be perfect, but it's like when you step back and you think of, like, well, maybe there's somebody else that's trying to start a baking company and they feel intimidated by where to start. And then you put a video and it's like, you're like, yeah, I'm here working in my pajamas, no makeup, just came back from the gym, like, and it's like people can resonate and like, okay, yeah, like maybe I can do this. Like, I don't always have to be so put together. I don't always have to feel my very best every single day. So I think that that's so important to kind of like step back and realize that, like, yes, social media is where a lot of people's businesses come from, but like being like not overcomplicating it. Like, it can be simple and easy and authentic and real, and you can still succeed.
Yeah, it's true, and I think, like, especially for moms who are trying to do things, they're like, "How can I, like, where would I find the time to do this outside my kids?" Like, by the time I get them to bed, I'm a disaster, and it's like, guess what? People wanna see you as a disaster, because
Yeah.
realistically, like, like, my audience is moms for the most part, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of moms who would start businesses, like, their client base would also be moms, and it's like, you come to them as a real person, and they're gonna be like, "You're the one who sells your business," right? Like,
Mhm.
anybody, realistically could, like, teach themselves to make cakes and do that kind of thing, but it's the person behind the business.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, when you show people, it's like, it doesn't have to be that hard, like, just don't overanalyze everything. Just be like, "Okay, my kids are in bed, like, maybe my hair's a mess, but, like, I'm gonna jump in and do this thing now."
Yeah. I love that. What would you tell your younger self now if you could? Looking at where you are, what is something that you would tell your younger self today?
Oh my gosh, get into a gym routine earlier in life. Um, I am 41. I wish that I had the knowledge that I have now when I was 25. Like,
Mhm.
what I would have done with my life in that 16 years if I knew this now. But I think it's just like, don't be afraid to go out and try things. Like, in I left policing when I was 38 years old, and I have tried so many new things in that time. Like, last year, I did a ladies dance class, and I am not a dancer, like, really, really not a dancer at all. My hips don't do what my brain, like, wants them to do, but I was like, "You know what? I've always wanted to learn to dance." And I was like, I'm 40, like, when am I gonna do this if I'm not doing it now? And I did it, and it was like 6 weeks, and then there was a 10-week one after that that culminated in a recital, and I was like, "I am never doing that recital." 10 weeks later, I'm up on the stage in front of hundreds of strangers doing that recital, right? And it
Wow.
was like the scariest but, like, most exhilarating thing, and I just think when I was younger, I was so scared to do many things. Now, like, you really don't care what people think about you as you get older, you really don't, and I was just like, "You know what?" I was like, for that dancing, for example, I was like, not one person in this audience is sitting there thinking, "Oh my gosh, like, they're making fools of themselves." They're all
Mhm.
thinking, "Man, I wish that I was brave enough to do something like that." Right? So I just wish my younger self was braver to do things that I wanted to do, like learn to dance, right? And I didn't. And like just different things. Like I've taught myself how to, day trade and invest in the last couple years. And that's something that always scared me when I was younger. It's, I think we're kind of told to be scared about investing our money. And
Mhm.
I trade options now and all these like really technical things that I didn't think I could ever wrap my brain around. But it's just like, don't be afraid to put yourself out of your comfort zone and learn these new things because at the end of your life, you're not going to, regret having tried it. You're only going to regret that you didn't try these things.
Oh, I love that. And I think it's so cool that like you did that and you put yourself out of your comfort zone and you felt like age is just a number, right? Like we all like age is just a number and there is no limit of like you can't follow things or you can't do things that make you happy. So I love that you brought that up.
And I
Okay.
think a lot of people think like, they would have been like, I'm 38. Like, how I couldn't possibly make a career change at this point in life.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm 38. I still got tons of years left. Like, I don't want to be miserable for the next 15, 20 years doing something like, I'm going to make the change now.
No, that's so important. What is your favorite dessert that you make?
Um, well, I want to say scones, but I don't think of scones as a dessert. I like
Okay.
scones really can be eaten any time of the day, but I think my scones are probably my favorite thing that I make.
I think I can agree.
Yeah.
As
They're good.
Ashley brings me scones and they're so good. The raspberry white chocolate, right? That's they are.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
so good.
so
Yeah,
good.
raspberry, the lemon cranberry is my favorite. And I'm not even a cranberry fan, but I love a lemon cranberry scone.
Oh yeah, I got to try those next. Okay, Ashley, let's go back to the beginning of the podcast where we talked about the two truths and one lie. If you want to remind us all what they are, and then I will take a guess.
So that I have 2 children and I've been with my husband for 20 years, that I have gone skydiving, and that I am deathly afraid of spiders.
Okay. I do know that you have the two kids and the husband, so I'm gonna say that's one of the truths. The lie? I don't know. I want to say the skydiving because I don't know. Do you like spiders? Like,
I
but I
I
would.
hate spiders.
Okay, so
The
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 skydiving.
skydiving is the lie. I have been bungee jumping in BC,
Mm-hmm.
but I have never been skydiving.
So skydiving's next on the list.
I don't know. Now that I have kids, probably not.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, it's a little too scary now. Bungee jumping was great, but that was probably enough for me.
No, that is fair. Okay, well, Ashley, thank you so much for coming on Socially Unapologetic. We loved having you. I feel like we got so much insight of who you are, what you do, and how you kind of navigated that staying comfortable in your job that you're not happy at. You can definitely expand and kind of open those wings and start something new, no matter what your age is. So I really appreciate you being here. It was so nice having you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I really liked it.